This is the Narukami deck build, second on Y. Alright, so it's a Vanquisher, primarily a Vanquisher deck build. Alright, so Vanquisher is it's an overall good card in the Stride format because on Stride you can automatically knock out one of your opponent's front row units as long as it's not a resist unit. That really honestly sucks with combinations. It allows you to not have to more or less worry about their front row units. And if you ever get to G-Break 2 and it's not, you find yourself in an awkward situation where they have perfect guards and you want a conquest but it just go to waste, you can swing with Vanquisher, or you can swing with Voltage Horn, activate skill to give Vanquisher an extra crit, and it more or less will mean that they'll have to perfect guard it, or use one of the perfect guards that they have, or
guard it hard.
Yeah, or it's...
Well, force the guard, more or less, yeah.
So I'm running 4. Well, just because it's the main card of the deck. And it generally is a good combo card for the... I personally think it's a good combo card for my setup. Alright, so since the only problem is finding another grade 3 to run with Vanquisher when you end up on that grade 3 and can't do anything. Because for the most part in a Vanquisher build, you can't really run a Legion in it because almost all Legion, or in a Conquest build specifically, you can't really run a Legion most Legions because Brawlers need a Brawler Vanguard, otherwise they're going to be like 19, and the only other one is like Crimson, and that you potentially it's
pretty cloggy with all the 3s.
Yes. Well, and it doesn't really come into play until late game, and I generally don't hit enough triggers for the Legion to actually be worth doing, like ever. So I'm running Tempest Bolt instead. I'm running 3 of them. So Tempest Bolt is an overall good card. I don't know why it's like $5, or not even 5 now.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
His regular skill is plus 2,000 for every open space, which is on a first turn ride. That's more or less a no guard, or they're gonna no guard your Vanguard because it's like 24 on ride if you have a booster or something like that. It's a good first turn play, or if you're going first, it's a good grade 3 ride. And its limit break is Counterblast 3, pretty much reset the board. So it's good for if you're getting rushed down against like Royal Paladin or was it Gold Paladin, I guess. And against Shadows, it's gonna be somewhere around 21. So even if you can't Stride, it's a minimum 2 cards they have to guard you with. And I am running the 1 Descendant because in case you need a 4th attack, the Restanding Vanguard is kind of a good way to push. The only thing is if you're not in a good position, the discard 3 can more or less end the game for you. Moving on to grade 2s, we have Chatura because it's an overall good card. I'm running 4 of it. Its skill is it's an 11k attacker, or it's an 8k base with plus 3 skill, but it can only attack the Vanguard. On hit, you counterblast 1 and you bind a card in your opponent's drop zone, so it can slow down a person's Legion, or make it so that their unflipping perfect cards are more or less useless. And you draw an extra card off it. So it's a free card, and an 11k attack on attacker with Conquest is roughly 16 to 21. Depending on how you could even, or with certain combos, you can even make it something like 30, I think 33. All right. Moving on to Voltage Horn. I'm running. It's an overall good card in the Vanquisher deck because if you're at G-Break 2, you can use the skill, kill one of their rear guards, and set up for, or activate Vanquisher's G-Break 2 so that your opponent actually has to guard your Vanguard. It makes Conquest a lot easier. And on the Conquest turn, you can start hitting back row with it. And generally, you want to use this to force your opponent to kill you can either use this so that your opponent has to decide between an intercept on a bad turn or a
Booster?
Well, yeah, a booster. So I'm running 4. I got 1 SP. Just because I couldn't find another, honestly. Would have made the deck. And then I'm also running 4 of the Generation Break 12k attackers. Again, on Conquest, it is a good 22k lane. And with the starting Vanguard, you can possibly make this 36 without triggers. So it's an overall good attacker in the deck. And I mean, with this deck, you're gonna try to rush down early so that your opponent has to think about how they're gonna guard the stride units. All right, so moving on to grade 1s. All right, so I'm running the Eradicator Perfect Guard, mainly because this deck doesn't counterblast too much, and it's very handy to Perfect Guard against, that heavy Duke swinging at your rear guard. And I'm also using it for the Eradicator name for the Tempest, in case it goes to damage and you're on Tempest Bolt or the Descendant. So, yeah, it's an overall good card with the deck, because don't really need you don't counterblast you won't generally counterblast as much as your opponent. And then I'm running 4 Hand Striders or Mighty Bolt, so that it's in case you find this situation to be bad on the Descendant or the Tempest Bolt. You can use this, discard them to search out, and generally Hand Strider, or to search out the Vanquisher, and generally you're going to want to discard these to keep your grade 3s in hands in case you can't get additional attackers, so that the grade 3s will become an instant 21 on the Conquest. Alright, so I am running the Wyvern Strike Pligma. I'm running 3 of it. I actually was originally running 4, but I lowered the count for the Descendant because you don't want to really go into a game without a chance of restanding your Vanguard. Especially since Descendant's it trades off because you can discard Descendant for Stride and it's still an 11k attacker. Again, on Stride, this can be 21 if you Conquest. And so it fills in for some grade 2s at some time. And I am running Agatha, Dragon Dancer Agatha. Its skill is, I'm running 2 of it. Its skill is when a unit is retired or put into the drop zone, you can Soul Blast 1 and give +3 to another another unit, I believe. Yeah. And you can give, it just makes it so that in case you have this behind one of your 11k attackers, it becomes 31 on Conquest, or you can give it to another column to fix up their numbers, so it'll drag more shield out. And since it's not a once per turn, so, if it was already out there when you strode over the Vanquisher, you could potentially activate this up to 2 or 3 times, depending on if you had the Voltage run or not. And then that's +9 in addition to the Conquest activation. On to triggers, we are running 4 of the Eradicator heal triggers, mainly because we like to heal, and for the name, really, there's not much to say about this.
There's not much to say about triggers, other than if they have skills or not.
I am running 4 of the Ionization Eradicator Capness. So its skill is when it's retired by an effect of one of your cards, you can put it back into deck and search the top 3 cards for an Eradicator. So you can use this on the Tempest Bolt if you ever get it off to search for a Perfect Guard or a grade 3 to stride into the Conquest next turn, because generally your opponents won't be able to fill up the board as quickly. And I mean, generally you don't want to play it with the game with too many boosters, so you should be minusing your opponent more than you're taking the hit, I guess, when you activate Tempest Bolt.
It's always nice to have a crit back in the deck.
Yes. Especially since my grade 3s aren't a Legion-based deck, so always being able to trigger is a nice thing. And I am running 4 Malevolent Djinns. This card is a general good combination, especially with the Agatha, because you can, on the stride turn, you can put this into, Agatha can activate, can move this into Soul, +3 to your unit, activate Conquest, Agatha goes off again, so you get a trigger and drops, you can use it for Soul, and you can give +12 out instead of +6 or 9. So it beefs up your columns a little more. And if you find yourself not having grade 2s early on to rush down, you can call this out. I don't know many people that would attack it, honestly. And you can use it behind the starting Vanguard to just attack for 9, so that on the next when you can finally stride, you can move it into Soul, and you can make your columns really beefy. All right, so I am running 3 Eradicator draw triggers. It's mainly because you generally want to start. You generally want units out there, and I'm using it for the Eradicator name. All right, and I'm running 1 of the Generation stand triggers, mainly because it's easy to. A stand trigger on a Conquest is. It's pretty good. I mean, you swing for 21, that's 15k guard. It'll restand for 26. I mean, that one rear guard, more or less your opponent dropped 35 shield on it. I mean, yeah. And then this stand trigger, because I'm on the retire skill, you can put it back into the deck, unflip a damage, and after shuffling the deck, you draw a card. So it's kind of like putting a trigger back, and for relatively, well, it doesn't minus you the putback, and because I'm only running the 1 stand trigger, so it's easy to keep track of. Because if you run too many, it'll mess up the draw count, and stands without units is pretty bad, in my opinion. If it ever goes into damage zone, you could just swing with your Vanguard first. It's not going to do too much, because, I mean, if your opponent's taking the Conquest, your criticals will make up for it, and that means that they couldn't guard the numbers anyway, or most of the numbers anyway. All right, and I'm running the Generation. I'm running Harbinger Draco Kid for the starting Vanguard. Its skill is when a unit is put into the bind zone, it can get +3. So on a Vanquisher on a stride turn, it's generally an 8k booster. However, if you combine it with Agatha or Zoros, it can go up to 14 or 17. So it's a very strong booster if your opponent can't get it off field. So generally behind the 12k attacker, it's an easy 36k without triggers, because 12k is, what was it, Conquest? Yeah, this was 26. Sorry. All right, so moving on to grade 4s. I am running. We'll start with this one. Zoros. I'm running 3 3 of them, mainly because it's an overall good card if you're going up against Legion, because it's on hit you retire one of your opponent, or your opponent chooses one of their units to retire, and you can bind 2 cards from the drop zone, so it's easy to get rid of unflipping perfect guards, and if they're running Legion, their triggers are mates. Generally, it's a stride that most people who are running Legion or will try to guard which makes it a little harder to
Deal with the conquest.
yes. And if it does hit, it's an easy 14k booster for the starting Vanguard. Alright. I am running Conquest Dragon. It's an overall, like, the best stride unit Narukami's could get because it's an easy push with most units. Its skill, you turn over a copy at generation when you have, and then if you have 2 units face up in the drops or in the G zone, you can retire one of your opponent's front row, and you can give +5 to your front row for every open space they have. Generally, over Vanquisher, that's a front row clear. You can clear your opponent's front row and give +10 to your. So it's an overall 30k that your opponent has to drop. I'm running 4 of it because it's a really easy push with it. And it's an overall good card, really. And for my last card in the G zone, I'm running Blizza because if they ever survive the perfect guard, generally if they ever survive the conquest, generally they won't have the perfect guards to survive the Blizza, which will normally swing around 56k by itself. And I mean, if you can get to the Blizza, more or less your opponent doesn't have shield because of all the extra 10s they kept guarding on the conquest rear guards. I mean, they'll generally be at 4 or 5 damage, so yeah. Alright, and that is my Vanquisher build.